2025 to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that this meeting is taking place on the unceded traditional territory of the Yakanuki within the Tanaka Nation. And before we adopt the agenda, I have a request from Councillor Houghton to add to it a late resolution for our AKBLG conference this weekend. So we will add that to the agenda. And then I would like a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Councillor Eisler, seconded by Councillor Aries. All in favor? It is carried. I would request a motion then that we adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting held on April 8th, 2025. Motion to Councillor Baldwin, seconded Councillor Holland. All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll go to our mayor and councillors reports first of all. And we'll start with me. I attended the Creston Valley Health Working Group on the 9th of April. And somewhere in there, I also did a Creston Valley Housing Corporation meeting. We'll go to Councillor Aries next.
I attended the Creston Valley Climate Action. I think that was the AGM, and then the Creston Valley Housing Corporation on the 15th, as well as the Creston Valley Library AGM on the 15th. I also attended, there was the opening of, I think it's called Yellow Bird Art School on Main Street. So I went to the opening of that last week, and definitely worth checking out. She's got courses for all levels of art. So, yeah.
Councillor Dumas.
April 9th, I attended the Creston Valley Regional Airport Society meeting, and April 15th, Creston Valley Housing Corporation, and April 17th, the Regional District of Central Kootenay Board meeting. Oh, and April 21st, the Creston Valley Blossom Fest.
Councillor Holland.
April 9th, I attended the Creston Valley Chamber of Commerce meeting.
Any other reports? Councillor Houghton.
April 9th, I attended the Creston Valley Health Working Group meeting. And then that evening, April 9th, the Trails for Creston Valley Society meeting.
Anyone else? Okay. And I would entertain a motion that the verbal and written reports of council be received. Councillor Dumas, seconded Councillor Aries. All in favor? Motion is carried. And we will convene to a committee of the whole meeting. So I would then request a motion that council resolves itself into committee of the whole. Councillor Baldwin, second Councillor Holland. All in favor? Motion is carried. So now we can get to some business here. So Staff Sergeant Brandon Boziak with your quarterly update.
Worship Council and staff, thank you for having me again. It's good to see you all. So for our quarterly update, covering off the what would be the last fiscal quarter of the RCMP year, the first quarter of the calendar year. We'll touch on a little bit of our calls for service, a little bit of a breakdown of our general occurrences, our mental health related occurrences. A lot of the stuff that I've categorized as the stuff that seems to be more time consuming for the membership and is not so much of the one-offs. In addition to that, beyond this, I'll go into an HR update as well as a couple other topics. So our calls for service, I've broken this down into a trend, 2022 until through the first quarter of this year. You'll see where we definitely had a spike last year. It started off right at the start, ballooned up in the summer to well above average and stayed pretty high right until December, above that usual trend line. As it sits today, statistically, we've responded to, in this first quarter, 1,042 calls for service. 574 of those calls, 547 being within the municipality, 495 being within the rural provincial area, so 52.5% for the municipality, 47.5% for the province. That trend has more or less been the same for the last few years here now, with the municipality seeming to lead a little bit more. That is balancing out a little more than it ended last fiscal, where the municipality was much higher. That being said, going into this quarter, we tend to get a little bit busier inside the municipality with tourism in the summer months. Also this year, forecasting, of course, only possibly a higher populace of tourism this year, given less travel potentially south of the line. Breakdown of violent offenses, right? Some numbers here that that I personally don't like to see. We overall within the municipality, we've seen an 11% increase so far this quarter in violent offenses, 7% increase on the rural side. When you look at that compared to the percentage of change from 22-23, we're obviously trending upward in those instances. Some of that can be attributed to higher reporting levels than the past, but it can also be attributed to a rise in that type of crime. One of the challenges, especially with the more serious offenses that we're seeing, is the current bail system and the functionings of it, where we're very seldomly seeing offenders incarcerated for periods of time. It's quite frequently some paperwork and a release, more often than not, and then us just dropping back into that cycle of having to address that offender's behavior going forward. Again, that's not a slight against the system whatsoever, just fact that we've observed. A couple of positive numbers there. Some of these where you see 100%, 50% decrease, we're looking at offense types that are minimally occurring in the valley in the first place. So, when we talk about human trafficking, if we had 2 the year prior and we have 0 this year so far on the go, that's 100% decrease, right? So somewhat skewed in the sense, but factual. The utter threats is a good trend. You see the grand total of files is actually quite higher, 127 incidents of uttering threats, and that's now been reduced in this first quarter by 21%, which is something that is typically a number we see higher in the winter months. We do get a lot more of those intimate partner type situations and that kind of stuff during the winter months when people seem to be kept more indoors and cooped up together. So that's a positive stat. And you'll notice there it's both on the municipal and the provincial side, 21% reduction municipal, 37% reduction on the rural side. Property offenses. This is an area that we're seeing a lot of progression continually with this. It's hard to see from here. Those numbers, they're a lot smaller when they're not right in front of you. But the green is good. Let's go that.
Dumb it down.
There's a lot more green in the final column than there is red, and that's what we want to see. Some significant reductions in some areas. One of the areas of note of a significant increase is under the fraud category. Unfortunately, there's a lot of fraud that takes place that's really outside of the control of the local detachment. Right? When I say that, I mean the scam calls, the scam calls to elderly people with that stuff's coming from countries overseas. It's not something that the local detachment really has much control over managing. We report it, we document it, we send it up to our through our channels to, you know, federal serious and organized crime and the likes of those units, but not something we have so much control over, so hard to really tackle that locally. The things we are able to tackle, the members are doing a great job with when it comes to property crime. A lot of that's directly attributed to their presence in the community, in the outlying areas, the proactive patrols, the monitoring and observations of known repeat prolific offenders. Other criminal code offenses, you know, these are the more uncommonly used, other than really cause of disturbance, which is a very general a general type of call. The cause of disturbance call is often within the municipality related to erratic behavior in the downtown core by persons that are repeatedly behaving accordingly. A number of those calls are associated to the old fire hall location, and a number of those calls are people that are residing at that location and throughout the downtown core. Will have times where they're vacant from the community, typically for custodial reasons, where that will drop. They are back, that increases again. But again, a significant increase there that you know, we have to be attentive to. Breach of conditions is one I want to point out. That's actually a good red, because what that means is that we are successfully prosecuting our accused, who are then being released back into the community on conditions. And because of our close observations of them, we're able to breach them on their conditions when they're not complying, which drives that number up. But it's actually a number that shows it's good. There's good police work going on, and it can be deceiving that way. As for the other categories, a lot of green down there, especially out in the rural area. Mental health related occurrences. It's just a breakdown of the last, essentially the last 4 years. The rural versus the municipal side of things. You can see it's a pretty regular trend. Ups and downs are at the same time. Other than that Q1 of 24, where you see that larger jump within the municipality. Did some digging into that, and I couldn't really find anything correlating why that difference was there. But it does drop back down and trend regularly after that. Q4 was actually a really good period for us in dealing with mental health related occurrences, and I attribute that to there's been a lot of behind the scenes work being done with IH. With local mental health and addiction services, and I would say it's probably been one of the better experiences out of places I've worked in the last little while here, with collaboration and actually coming together to address the needs of some of these individuals and not just focus on it being a criminal matter or it's been great collaboration, and that stat shows that it's working. As far as human resources go, we're currently staffed 12 of 13 bodies. We have one provincial body seconded out to Indigenous policing services. There is no time frame on that secondment right now. I was able to secure that position to be working 3 out of its 4 shifts per week in the Valley, and focused on our local bands, Indigenous needs here, and the policing relationship. That being said, and I think that some of the numbers are starting to reflect this a little bit too. We're definitely starting to run into the fatigue factor with our frontline membership. They have been they've bought into programs that I've asked them to buy into for nearly 3 years now. They've worked tremendously hard to keep those numbers down, but that comes at a cost with the resources we have here. And we're now starting to be at a point where I need to shift some of my initiatives towards resting our members as well. So working on that, one of the issues that I noted at fiscal year end this year is the amount of annual leave carried over, so vacation time. Our members are only allowed to carry over a certain amount. Anything above that, they are automatically paid out for. And I think we had one member in the entire detachment that actually used their vacation allotment in last year. So that's a problem for me. It's something that I'm going to have to, again, focus on thinning some areas of service delivery out in order to rest our people before that burnout phase, right? Outside of that, sorry, that's kind of doom and gloom, but we're working behind the scenes really hard right now on our Creston RCMP Charitable Foundation. June 28th, we're hosting our second annual golf tournament in support of the Cops for Kids Society. So a lot of work by our members on that. Almost every member sits on that charity committee and a bunch of community members as well. So that's some volunteer work taking place behind the scenes, with hopes to have another big year at that event to make a donation. And that is all I have.
Any questions, Councillor Eisler?
I was just curious what you have going on for community outreach right now, like through the high school or other areas.
Yeah, so right now I've got two of my members are kind of the key outreach members for the high school and also doing a lot of work with the band. But they're working with. We've been doing some awareness pieces. I'm trying to think of the last couple awareness pieces they did. The last one was a drug awareness piece, which was just the other day, and then just some focus on building the relationships up. One of our newer members transferred in was definitely, that was kind of his niche in his last detachment. So he's really bought into getting on board there.
Yeah.
And we've got one of our constables coaching youth soccer right now as well. And then I'm very engaged behind the scenes in volunteering with the Thundercats organization as the vice president there.
Yeah.
So there's some good stuff going on with community outreach and initiatives, volunteer work. Again, I got to be careful how much we commit them. but yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Baldwin.
My question concerned sort of incarceration generally. I don't know what your current, if you could characterize a given month, are you really busy? Are you slammed with people overnight kind of thing, or is there a different type of incarceration going on?
So the best way to explain that, the courts will issue a lot of arrest warrants. A lot of the times when these individuals fail to appear or fail to comply with conditions, the warrant will be issued unendorsed, meaning that we don't have powers of release. We have to take them before a judge. The province has now opted to move to what they call a virtual bail hub, meaning that no longer, gone are the days where BC sheriffs come to the detachment, pick up the accused, transport them to the sheriff's holding facility, and take them to the physical courthouse. That doesn't happen anymore. Now it's on us. So they're in custody. They are in the detachment in cells. Our members will have to respond to all the phone calls from duty counsel, court services, usher the prisoner to the lawyer room so they can talk privately on the phone, take them back to their cell, be in the detachment or when the time comes that Creston Detachment is up on the docket for the virtual bail. And then the members will escort the prisoner to a bail room where there's a newly installed system with video and everything, and court takes place.
Sound like sheriffs then?
In a sense, there are certain roles that have
Been handed off to you.
been put on additionally. Yeah. So that I find is consuming a lot of time. And that is because a lot of these, there are certain deadlines in which the package has to be submitted by, reviewed by, a charge laid by, or the warrant
You have to
reviewed
drop
by,
everything you do.
and then they'll either get slotted in for evening or the following afternoon bail. Which is, and then sometimes what we're getting is between council, defense, and Crown, agreements to adjourn for a day because we need to talk more. And then that's another day of this process, another day of us keep up prisoners, etc. So it's certainly financially, I don't have those numbers in front of me right now. From a human resource standpoint, it hurts us because when we are awaiting a bail process to happen, especially if it's a violent offender, my say 2 officers that are working, but not out on the road, they're waiting for the phone to ring so they can facilitate the bailing.
And they also have to manage the custody, right? So in other words, somebody has to feed them
And that's a jail guard that's called in as well, but the jail guard can't facilitate the bail process. So yeah, it's a good question, and it's definitely one that's we find interesting the way that process is happening.
Any other question? Stefan?
Just further to that, and that's sort of a provincial responsibility, though, isn't it? With the RCMP's taken on, with the bail being like acting as bailiffs for the court.
Yes, I mean, there are varying stages of when somebody becomes a provincial prisoner, right? If they've been charged and remanded into custody, they are a provincial prisoner at that point. If we arrest them on new charges in downtown kind of thing, and we're submitting our package to Crown and we're waiting for this bail hub process to take place, they're technically, an RCMP prisoner until they've been remanded.
Okay.
Which at that time, when that remand document comes through, that's usually me on the phone right away to the sheriff's service saying, let's get a run going. It's because there's a provincial facility designed for this, not our detachment.
Okay, well, as always, we appreciate your dedication and that of the members here, and we feel that we live in a fairly safe streets in a pretty safe town, and thanks to the dedication of you and the RCMP officers that you supervise.
Thank you, Your Worship. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on then to Brenda Vandermeer, Apex Accounting for the 2024 audit.
Good afternoon, everybody. I will just say thank you for having me here now and not of reviewing taxes at the moment. That is what I'll be doing after this. So I'm here to present your audited financial statements as of December 31st, 2024. So our first page of it will be your management report. This outlines the responsibilities of management and you guys for your audited financial statements. The second and third page is our audit report. This outlines our responsibilities. And the important part of that is the beginning where, in our opinion, these accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the town as of December 31st, 2024, and its financial performance and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with the Canadian Public Accounting Standards. You can hop like 3 pages, no problem. Keep going. One more. There we go. Okay, so now we will start with your consolidated statement of financial position. So first we have your financial assets. At the end of December 31st, you had cash and investments of $18,173,190, which was up from the prior year $15,526,631. This is made up primarily of the following: your CIBC general bank account of just shy of $600,000, your Scotiabank GIC of $6,548,000, your Canaccord GIC of $3,217,000, your CIBC MFA account at $2,506,000, and your Raymond James GIC at $5,293,000. Then you have your accounts receivable. This year it was $1,748,744 compared to the prior year $1,273,627. This is made up of property tax receivables of $552,909, due from government agencies of $820,392. This includes receivables from the Provincial Health Service, Province of BC, RCMP, RDCK, and others, just so you know what makes all that up. Your general revenue receivables of $375,443, and this includes receivables from the College of the Rockies, the brewery, and other smaller receivables. And then you have your MFA deposits. This year is $216,336, which is fairly comparable with the prior year, $213,699. Then we have your loans receivable at $1,820,000 compared to the prior year $1,929,000. The composition is the same. It contains the airport receivable of $60,508 and the BC ambulance loan for the loan relating to the emergency services building of $1,759,621. So you have total financial assets at the end of December of $21,958,399. Then we move on to your financial liabilities. This contains your accounts payable and accrued liabilities. This year was $3,958,654 compared to the prior year, $2,042,816. This is comprised of other governments payable of $2,021,869. This includes payments to the Canada Revenue Agency, RDCK, WorkSafe, policing costs, etc. You have accrued wages and benefits of $556,902. And trade and other of $1,379,883. This is your general operating invoices, and it also includes the repayment to the brewery for $756,000, which relates to the funds that was collected previously for a capital project that wasn't ending up going through. Then we have your deferred revenues. This year it was $3,958,000 compared to $2,042,000 the prior year. And this consists of prepaid taxes of $240,000, holdbacks and deposits of $273,000, federal gas tax of $231,000, and other deferred revenue of $503,000. The other deferred is the donations and some small grants that are in there. Then we have your development cost charges. The current year is $515,000 compared to the prior year $486,000, and this change is entirely made up of interest that has been earned. Your long-term debt at the end of December was $4,800,000 compared to $5,068,000 the prior year. This consists of your emergency services building loan at $4,202,000, the water pollution BVS cover loan at $100,000, and your wastewater treatment plant upgrade loan at $486,000. Then, as we added in last year, you now have your asset retirement obligation. This year is $760,000 compared to the prior year's $667,000. The increase this year is due to the asset purchase of the Armitage Center. So there's some additional costs that we needed to accrue relating to that. So your total financial liabilities this year, it was $11,451,000 compared to $9,562,000. So your net financial assets is $10,506,000 compared to $9,380,000 in the prior year. Now your non-financial assets, so your tangible capital assets this year went up to $54,344,000 compared to the prior year's $52,637,000. This year you had additions of $3,782,000. This is including but not limited to the Armitage building, the Creston Education Center upgrades, road restoration program, which was just over $1 million, the active transportation infrastructure, the fire command vehicle, the 20th Avenue property purchase, and a bunch of other things. Those were your bigger ones. This year, there was some disposals of $224,000, which was primarily some older vehicles that you disposed of. Then after that, you have your supply inventory of $609,000 compared to $628,000. It is comparable to the prior year, a little bit of fluctuation, and the composition is the same. And then you have your prepaid expenses. Again, it is fairly consistent at $166,000 compared to $178,000 the prior year. So your total non-financial assets is $55,071,000 compared to $53,444,000 for a total accumulated surplus at $65,578,000 compared to last year's $62,825,000. The bottom also then shows how your accumulated surplus is broken up between your different funds. So if we go to the next page. Okay, this is your statement of operations. It shows really how your whole year went. So your revenue for the year was $17,209,000 compared to the prior year's $19,316,000. This comprised of property taxes of $6,577,000. It's a 7% increase over the prior year. A little bit of grants in lieu. Sales of services is $2,672,000, which was up 10% from the prior year. Government transfers of $2,753,000. Your investment income from your GSEs and investments at $1,179,000. Utility user fees at $3,541,000 and other revenue at $474,000. Your other revenue you're going to see decreased compared to last year because last year had that land donation that was included at the $675,000. So that's what that big increase is. Your other revenue is actually fairly consistent with what it is normally. So. And then this year, your expenses was $14,456,000 compared to $13,576,000. Overall, your expenses are fairly consistent. There's been no significant change or unusual expenses that have incurred. So they're all just general ups and downs, nothing significant to point out to you there. So your annual surplus was $2,752,000 compared to the prior year's $5,739,000. Then after this, we have your your changes in net financial assets, which just shows the ins and the outs that relates to your net financial assets. Pretty standard, nothing exciting to point out there. It's fairly consistent. Then we have your next page, which is your statement of cash flows, which just shows how all the money was spent in and out throughout the year. Again, it was fairly consistent between the 2 years. Then after that, we have your notes. So there has been no significant changes in your accounting policies, which is your first note. A new policy has been added for the current year due to the town corporation being added and the shares purchased. So we have added in a note there that just identifies that the town is now the shareholder of the Creston Valley Housing Corporation, and going forward, the financial statements will be done on the consolidation purposes due to 100% ownership of those shares. So when you're looking at those, that is the only change of those. After that, it's just your notes, which just outlines in more detail all the things I've already gone over. And then we have your schedules at the back, which includes your first schedule is your consolidated statement of the tangible capital assets. So it's just a breakdown of your capital assets. Your second schedule is your consolidated schedule surplus and reserves, which just breaks down your operating fund, your capital fund surplus, and your statutory reserves. Your third schedule is your schedule of consolidated operations by segment. So you can see where the income went in and out based on segment. Your fourth schedule is a schedule of provincial COVID-19 Safe Restart grant utilization. That one will be gone next year because all the money has been used the last year for it. That was all used up last year. And then your final schedule is your Growing Communities Fund Reserve, which you're required to disclose, so it shows how the funds are being spent year after year. Any questions?
Not seeing any questions.
That's what I like. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Well, that's a quick review of our financial statements, and they're all in detail somewhere.
Yeah. If any council has any questions, just call if you have any questions. I'm willing to hold that with you.
All right. Move on then. We've got two delegations, and so the motion then is that the committee of the whole receives the delegation from Staff Sergeant Brandon Boziak regarding the quarterly report. That recommendation or a motion?
Just a recommendation.
Okay, recommendation, we're good with that? The second one then is that the committee of the whole receives the delegation of Apex Accounting regarding the 2024 audit financial statements, and further that council adopts the 2024 financial statements as presented. We good with that? All right. So we'll move on to the direction request from the Director of Community Services regarding reoccurring open park booking request.
Worship and Council. Brian Fladhammer of Company Vibes Entertainment has requested use of Millennium Park on the first Friday of each month for the next 4 months. Party in the park, featuring local DJs, from what I understand. This is coming to you because as staff, we can approve the bookings. We cannot approve the sponsorship that is being requested to cover the booking fees. So what we would do, being as it's on May 2nd, we can, as staff, deal with the approval of it itself, and then we would come to council on the next meeting to formally request that decision. So with that though, is there any questions on that booking or the process there?
I have some questions for Brian. I remember in the past there was a group having like dance kind of throughout the summer, and so I was wondering if you were going to do like a donation thing for the artists there. Was that
if I could get the booking fees sponsored, I'm not so much looking for donations for people who attend the event.
Right.
I just wanted to kind of do this to promote my company and have, I did a couple times last year and the people in town seemed to really like it.
Yeah.
It was attended by older people as well as younger people.
Yeah.
And I just want to give a place where people can come and dance in the park for a couple hours.
Yeah. So, because the ones you did before were kind of more one-offs, and how many people did you have?
So I would have about 20 people there, but I would only advertise it the day of,
Right.
which I think dropped the attendance down.
Sure.
This one, now that I have 4 dates in mind, I'm hoping to get maybe about 100 people per event.
Yeah, because you did.
That's probably ideal, but
Yeah.
I think, the first one might not be so well attended, but by the 4th, I'm hoping to have a decent turnout.
Okay. Great,
Yeah.
thanks.
Councillor Baldwin.
I was just thinking, what about a rain canceled event or something like that? Would you reschedule it?
What was that, sorry?
If an event was scheduled because of weather, for instance?
Would I reschedule it? Probably not. My availability only really gives me these 4 days to be able to do the park. And Friday's kind of the ideal day. Saturdays, I'm usually booked for weddings or other events.
So,
I would be open to reschedule, but there's no plans to make sure all 4 go through.
One more?
just real quick, when are you going to arrive to set up? It looks like it's all day. Is that right? Or?
So it would take me about an hour and a half. So I'd be getting there at about 4:30.
Oh, okay.
Hard cut by 10 o'clock. Because I don't want to play loud music past 10 o'clock. And then I'm usually out of the park, everything wrapped up by about 11.
No, it's just the first part of the day. I thought it was going to be, you were going to be in there for that day.
Okay, so recommendation is that council receive the April 22nd, 2025 council direction request titled Recurring Open Park Booking Request for Information, and further that council directs staff to prepare a request for a decision regarding the park booking request at an upcoming council meeting. You good with that? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're working on it.
Okay, thank you.
So our next item of business is our resident directed grant awards, and we have a spreadsheet before us. And first, I think a lot of this is sort of agreed upon. I don't know if we need to go piece by piece, do we, or not?
If council is comfortable, so just as a recap, we did have our public engagement session on April 9th, and about 29 applicants showed up and provided their input for their things. Then council provided their updated allocations, which are reflected in this. So really, the average ends up being what we allocate, and there are just a few areas that have been highlighted not quite making sense. So I'd like to flag those ones, and we can maybe discuss them here without going through every single one. But the first one is the Greater Trail Community Skills Center Society. We have $92.80 allocated out of the Act of 2,500. And we still have 2 counselors who might want to consider amending their allocations, but it's up to them. So the first one is yourself, Mayor DeBoon, at 500, and the second one is Councillor Holland at 150. So maybe starting with Mayor DeBoon, is there a place you'd like to allocate that, or would you like to leave it as is?
Did I deal with that on my adjustments to you? Oh, okay. So I think I can reallocate that. Just have to find where I'm going to put it. Yeah.
Must have missed it. Yeah, I will reallocate my funds as well.
Okay, where would you like to put that, Councillor Holland?
There it was. Yeah. Where's that one? That one's this one, right?
I can tell you where I want to reallocate mine, and that would be to the first item on the list, which is the Freshwater Fisheries Society.
Councillor Houghton.
I'd like to reallocate mine to the Cops for Kids Charitable Foundation.
So you just have the line item on the bottom corner for me, and I found it.
Sure, yep, 64, yep.
Okay, great. It's an increase of 150. 450, fix that one. Great. Okay. Move it there. Perfect. The pen is being moved down. The next one to flag is South Kootenai Lake Art Connect Society. So the average allocation was $57.14 of their total ask of $200. So we had Councillor Aries who allocated $200 there. Councillor Eisler with 100 and Councillor Houghton with 100. So up to you again if you'd like to keep it at 57.14 or if you would like to reallocate.
I'm happy to reallocate that one. Sure. Okay. So I'll put my 200 towards the seed production to Creston Community Seed Bank Society.
Okay. Sorry, do you have just the number on the side?
200. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
The numbers on the side.
This is the part of the RDCK.
271 2025.
No, the Creston.
Oh, the seed bank.
Yeah.
258 2025.
Okay. Okay. There, thank you. It's just, so 1,700. Councillor Eisler?
Yeah, I can reallocate mine to the annual rescue movements, annual rescue association.
Councillor Houghton?
Yes, you can reallocate, number 4. Line 4. Sorry, line 4.
So, sorry, can you just tell me that order?
Boswell and District Emergency Volunteer for the AEG.
Yeah, I'm not. The third one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. Then the last two is South Kootenai Lake Art Connect Society. So we've got Councillor Aries with 250, Councillor Houghton with 125, and Councillor Houghton with 100. Same question, would you like to leave it?
Yep. Or no, sorry, I'll reallocate mine to the fisheries. So the first one to 2025. So 250 to 2025. Yeah.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's 2207. Great. Okay, and then just moving on the line, Councillor Houghton, you have 125.
You can reallocate that to line 261, Creston and District Historical and Museum Society.
Okay. Maybe that's 261 right up here. That was the Jennifer claim. Councillor Holiday.
I will reallocate the funds in that one to the Creston Valley Community Housing Society for 201 2025. Pop that up.
Okay, great. And then very final one, Councillor Holland, we just had another $100 under Nelson History Theater Society.
Yes, which is a shame because they actually do come to Creston. Just, yeah. No problems with, they do, but anywho, let's go to, just below it, I'll top up the Creston Valley Minor Hockey Association, 310-2025.
Okay, I think everything balances there. So then the average allocations will just get put forward to the RDCK. And then they make their determination of the board meeting along with the other pieces from the surrounding areas. Perfect. Thank you so much for all the work you've done. No, it's not. Thank you.
It's hard to allocate money when you know you're not giving anybody exactly what they want.
Yeah.
An exercise that we have to do, but it is difficult. Okay. That's my agenda. So then the recommendation is that council allocates the resident directed Columbia Basin Trust grants as presented. We're good with that? So that will move forward then. Okay, so we can then rise from our committee of the whole with a motion that we rise from the committee of the whole. Councilor Aries, seconded Councilor Eisler, all in favor? Motion is carried. So we are now in our regular council meeting and we'll go to division reports. The first one that we have is the finance and administration community development grant request from the Creston Valley Community Housing Society for the building condition assessment for $5,000.
So I can speak briefly to this. So this is similar to what came forward in your ready grants, but the building condition assessment. So if you're community discretionary grant fund, I believe that there is a balance of $8,250 left over.
That's before we get our 2025 allotment. So it's, and we're considering $75,000. Council will be hearing a report. I'm asking for $75,000. That's why there's only $8,000 for the town of Creston.
Right, so the request is for $5,000. It looks like we have the flexibility to do something else. So I just ask council if they're okay with the $5,000, or if there's anyone that would recommend a different amount. And again, we know what this is for. This is for some of our housing projects that are aging, and it's a request that they have building condition assessments done, and they're expensive, and it takes money out of their operating funds. So I guess what we're requesting is a motion. Okay, Councillor Button.
So when I look at this, it does look like they're still have some asks that are pending, which if they were to get those full amounts, then yeah, I get that the 5,000 would be nice, but I'm curious. I don't know. I just think there's some more dollars that potentially are coming to them, and I'm also curious: is this is our discretionary grant? Do we tend to take that to zero by the end of the year, or do we always think that a carryover?
That I might be able to.
Typically, we always have carryovers. It's not something that, but we just happen to try to use up a large amount of those funds by budgeting to use those funds in our 2025 to 2029 financial plan. And so we were carrying $83,000 forward from last year. Well, we've got a large 5 projects we're bringing forward for that.
Go ahead, Mike.
Also, just this is through the regional district community directed funds.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's ours to direct for projects.
Councilor Baldwin?
And my question is similar. If they already have funds from somewhere else, and this is more money than they're needing, would they reduce, repay, or just hold on to this for another project in the future? What are they obligated to do?
Well, I'm not sure, but what I do know is that when they came to us for the money on the ready grants here, they had said that they were putting in for a grant, I think, to Creston Foundation, and I'm not sure if they received that grant.
I'm not entirely sure, but they did reduce their overall ask due to that.
Yeah.
So the other option is you could refer it back to staff and we could follow up around that because a lot has happened since they put the grant request in. So if council's feeling unsure, we could look into it a bit further.
I think we'd like to determine where they're at with the requests before we grant them money. We want them to go ahead with the project, but again, we don't need to overfund them either, I don't think. So we'll refer that back to staff. Then we'll move on to the next request for decision regarding the 2025 tax rate bylaw.
Your worship, just a motion to refer it.
I'll second. You will make that motion? Okay, the motion is that the report titled 2025 tax rate setting dated April 22nd, 2024 from the Director of Finance be received, and further that the tax rates bylaw number 2034-2025 be read a first time by title, second by content. So we do that one individually before we do the next one?
So we've kind of done two things at once. We just need to back up one step and just refer the community development grant request to staff so we can follow up. Okay. And so Councillor Dumas moved it, Councillor Baldwin seconded it. So if we could just do a quick vote.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. Motion is carried.
And then a mover and a seconder for the first portion of the resolution that his worship just said. Perfect.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Dumas, seconded by Councillor Eisler. Discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. And then that tax rate bylaw number 2034-2025 be read a third time by title. Councillor Aries, seconded Councillor Holland. All in favor? Motion is carried. Move then to community services regarding the Parks Master Plan.
Thank you again. The Parks Master Plan was brought to council, presented by the consultant that worked on the project on March 25th. After that, we went out for public feedback for a few weeks, offered prize, tried to get some feedback. We got a bit, 20-something responses, lots more people that saw the page. So we didn't make any changes or request changes based on feedback received. Staff felt that the feedback that came in it was really more about communication of the plan itself as opposed to issues with the plan. How do we explain how we're moving forward with implementation and that sort of thing, and that maintenance is in the plan and so on. So with that, staff is recommending that council adopt the plan.
Any questions? Councillor Hunt?
Yeah, so I read through the plan and there is a section on the implementation, which essentially would be an action plan, but it's a bit of a broader action plan. So I'm curious, are you guys going to then take those kind of broader recommendations and I don't know, have a bit more goal oriented, or we're going to do this in 25 and we're going to do this in 26? And if you are, then do we need to not make this motion knowing that the action plan is actually going to look different than it's showing in the master plan?
So what we plan on doing is, looking at the implementation and then bringing forward to budget what we can, realistically handle in a year. So if there's things that we can do, otherwise it's primarily the guidance for it. And Yeah, if council wants a specific action plan, we can develop one out to go into detail on each of the steps, but the landscape changes.
Like the multimodal thing, right?
Yeah.
It would have been huge if we tried to do everything at once.
Yeah, basically, that's it. The money of everything changes year to year. So yeah, it's has enough detail for us to work from. But it's not a complete step-by-step action plan either.
I think the center point of this motion addresses some of those questions because it says that while reserving the right to consider each recommended action with an associated staff report. So we would adopt the master plan, and then each time that we want to implement something or consider it, there will be a separate staff report. And again, the reconsideration of the 5-year financial plan. So we won't be moving too fast with this, and we'll consider each step along the way. So with that, I would entertain the motion that council receives the April 22nd, 2025 request for decision, titled Parks Master Plan Adoption, and that council adopts the Town of Creston Parks Master Plan while reserving the right to consider each recommended action with an associated staff report, and further that council may prioritize the recommendations in a manner that aligns with the 2022-2026 Town of Creston Strategic Plan and the 5-year financial plan. Motion 2. Councillor Baldwin, seconded Councillor Holland. Discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Just a question about the 2022 to 2026 strategic plan and 5-year financial plan. I would assume that we're not going to complete everything within that 5-year financial plan, so it will stretch onward from there as well.
Yes. In all likelihood,
yeah, because that's a pretty sizable plan for that 5-year financial plan. So I'm assuming that we will be parts of it, but
that's right. Strategic prioritization piece of it is the key there.
Good. Okay, we'll move on then to the request for decision regarding the development, the DVP for 908 Northwest Boulevard.
So this was again brought to Committee of the Whole a few weeks ago now. The date's there, April 3rd. April 3rd is when we send out the notices. So we sent out notices to all the surrounding property owners, hand delivered to tenants, and we received no response back. I think everybody's relatively okay with the idea of an extra sign on that business. So with that, we would recommend that council approve the variance permit.
Any questions? I'll read the motion and ask for a mover then. That council receives a request for decision from the Director of Community Services regarding development variance permit 25-01 to vary sign bylaw number 1797/2014, and further that council directs staff to issue development variance permit 25-01 to vary sign bylaw number 1797/2014, section 7.3, maximum number type of permanent signs allowed from 1 fascia sign to 2 fascia signs per business frontage, totaling 2 fascia signs on the building located at 908 Northwest Boulevard. Motion 2. Councillor Eisler, seconded Councillor Dumas. Any further discussion? All in favor? That motion is carried. And it looks like we got one more, Joe, on zoning amendment bylaw.
Yeah. Thanks, sorry that those signed bylaw ones are so lengthy to read.
Yeah, that's all right.
So the zoning amendment bylaw number 2025. This is the change for the principal residency requirement in relation to short-term rentals in order to align with the province, basically so that the operator has to reside there for at least half, for the majority of the days in the year, as opposed to 8 months out of the year at that location to operate. Excuse me. As this was in conformance with our official community plan, we went immediately to notice of first reading instead of having a public hearing for zoning. And so we had those notices out. We haven't received any comment on that. So at this point, council can not adopt, but give first and second readings to the bylaw. if they wish.
Wait, I'll read the motion that you are making.
Yes.
The council received the April 22nd, 2025 council direction request titled zoning amendment bylaw number 2027-2025. That zoning amendment bylaw number 2027-2025 be read a first time by title and a second time by content. So that's what you still make that. Seconded by Councilor Baldwin. Discussion. All in favor? Motion is carried. So we'll move on to the recommendations from the committee of the whole. Recommendation number 1 from the committee of the whole meeting of April 8th, 2025, which is that the report titled Partnering Agreement Creston Valley Housing Corporation dated April 8th, 2025 from the Chief Administrative Officer be received for information, and further that council directs staff to bring the partnering agreement between Creston Valley Housing Corporation and the town of Creston forward for final approval on the completion of the Creston Valley Housing Corporation review and the required public notice provisions of section 24 of the community charter. That's the motion. We have a mover, Councillor Houghton, seconded by Councillor Holland. Discussion. All in favor? Motion is carried. We have some correspondence here, and the first one is that the mayor is authorized to proclaim May 15th, 2025 as Moose Hide Campaign Day in the town of Creston. So I'll just request somebody make that motion. Councillor Holland, seconded Councillor Aries. Discussion. All in favor? Motion is carried. And I gave each of you a patch of Moose Hide with the card on the campaign here. If anybody else wants one, I have some here. I'll even hand them out to the audience. People in the gallery, as soon as we're done this part, I will pass these to you with the information. I have more in my desk. And secondly, then, the Focus on Youth proclamation requests that the mayor is authorized to proclaim May 5th to 9th Focus on Youth Week in the town of Creston. Motion 2, Councillor Lewis, seconded Councillor Houghton. Discussion. All in favor? Motion is carried. The acting mayor's schedule is there in front of you. In May, it's Councillor Eisler. June, Councillor Houghton. July, Councillor Holland. August, Councillor Aries. And it's time for questions.
We have the agenda, so we have.
That's correct. That is correct. I wrote it on the front. Didn't see it on the back.
Yeah.
So Councillor Houghton, go ahead.
Yeah, so at our recent Creston Valley Health Working Group meeting, we had one of the physicians, as well as a report from the chief of staff, talking about the challenges that they're a bit worried, that they're a bit anticipating around physician numbers in our community. And so they're very proud that they haven't had to experience an ER closure like a lot of other rural communities in the province. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of others, but there are communities that have struggled with NIH. And some of IH's strategy is to pull physicians from communities that are doing okay to come and cover in these struggling communities. And there have been Creston physicians that have gone to do that. At the meeting, they stated that physician numbers were stable today. But that easily could shift. Now, they didn't anticipate a shift happening, but life happens and physicians come and go because of that. And so they talked about some of the things that make it easy for physicians to choose Creston as the community that they come to versus other communities. And they also talked about those things that they've entertained a lot of physicians to come here through locums or just meet and greets, and they've chosen other communities. And so, you know, as a working group, we felt we were meeting a lot of the actions that we could do as council to support and entice physicians to come here. But one of the things that the physicians talked about is around retention of physicians in rural communities. And really, this is a provincial level issue. And the physicians asked, can you help to get this concern about retention of physicians in rural areas out there? Right now in the province, if a physician applies to come to BC, they apply through Health Match BC. And even if they indicate that they want to apply to work in a rural community, they are being snatched. Their applications aren't even coming to rural communities. They're going right to the centers where they need it, which is the Lower Mainland and a little bit into the Okanagan. And so they really are looking for that recognition from the Ministry of Education around the importance of rural physicians and rural healthcare and retention of physicians. So it's not even around dollars, because there are billing that they're able to do as rural physicians, but it's about that recognition that this is, although we aren't the big percentage of the population in the province, geographically, we are a very large part of the province, and physicians are spread out quite thin. So some recognition. And so they were like, if you can get it there anyway. And we thought maybe through going through the AKLBG, hoping that would be accepted there and then move forward to UBCM and then to the health ministry. So some wordsmithing on that blurb.
And also, as you mentioned earlier, some research on whether this has gone through UBCM before, what the resolution was, and if we need to wordsmith it more or just sort of repeat what's there. So it will be considered a late submission to AKBLG then.
And so my understanding then is that it would be read by us, and it would go to the group to decide whether or not they want to move it forward, because it isn't endorsed or not. So it has to be endorsed. And then we would read it again and see if it's moved forward.
Mike?
Well, I was just going to say, I'm not sure about the rules at AKBLG for reading motions from the floor. So certainly it's well past the deadline. I think AKBLG is February.
It's February 20th.
Yeah. So, and then for staff to put any time into it, they certainly don't have time this week. And so it would have to be something that we plan for next year. We can put it on an action list.
We can put it on an action
put that on
list.
there.
You can also investigate late and or submissions directly to UBCM. The deadline or directly to UBCM is June 21st.
Yeah, so we can try to do that.
We could,
And would it be something, Keith, maybe if we don't take it to AKBLG? Is it something that the hospital board would talk about and take forward to UBCM?
Yeah, we can work with that, but the next meeting for them is still a while away. I don't think it's a tough one, because most of the time with these kinds of resolutions, they have to be quite specific. If you leave it too loose, people they don't even raise their hands to support it. It's got to be an action, a strong thing. And there's some things already with doctors in Kimberley and Cranbrook complaining about the fact that it's been years since they've been getting there's actually incentive pay for those kinds of communities, and they don't get it. They're almost the only doctors that don't. So they're saying Cranbrook isn't rural enough. Kimberley isn't rural enough. And so there's already a level of dissatisfaction with the incentive program to retain doctors now that the KER, the hospital district, is aware of.
The only thing I would request of staff is just maybe point Councillor Houghton to the UBCM website with perhaps the keywords that she would need to search to see if this resolution has a history, and so that she could then continue with that research, if that's okay.
I can definitely support you in that.
Yeah.
The only other suggestion I had as well was that you know, because there is some time between now and UBCM and making, requests for minister meetings, it's awfully hard, in fact, almost impossible to get a meeting with Minister of Health, so I wouldn't bank on that. But we might be able to get a staff meeting, and so we could put something forth about, I mean, it would have to be, you know, again, very, very specific, because if you're gonna take their time, it's gotta be very specific of what is it you don't like and what needs to change. So if we, you know, could come up with something, you know, we certainly have that as an opportunity. Outside of that is I would work on that as something maybe that we can research and put together for AKBLG next year. But yeah, at this point,
It's not changing, so.
well, that's why I'm suggesting, you know, perhaps if we try to get ministry staff, and if we can be very specific about what our ask is, you know, stop using health match. But that's what you need to ask. It's got to be very specific. And reason we don't get doctors that way, we spend money in recruitment, and you guys are taking, that could be a very simple staff request. Not that it'll travel very far, but at least it starts the conversation, because some of these things, to make the province even pay attention, certainly does take years and years of poking and prodding. I'm not very familiar with anything that happens the first time a resolution or conversation take place. Sometimes it's years in the making. So that would be my suggestion for it.
Okay. That was the extra agenda item.
So if we just have a resolution, put that on our action list, so it's on your.
Okay.
Well,
let's write that as a resolution and to put it on.
Perfect. I mover.
Councillor Houghton, take it.
Yeah.
Councillor Baldwin will second it. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks for your input. And we have a question period. Any questions from the gallery? No. Okay. We're going to recess and move to a closed meeting. So I would then, before you go, I do have a couple of Moosehide campaign cards here with Moosehide. You can see what it's about. Very Moosehide.
You need a big garage. Some kind of a discussion.
While we're at that, the motion then is that the regular council meeting of April 22nd be recessed at 5:17, and by the authority of the community charter, council moved to a closed council meeting, with this meeting being closed to the public and is news pursuant to the community charter legal, I would say. Okay, that's fine.
Lisa just said first and second.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Carried.
He's on your hands.
Yeah, I took.